Hello again, and welcome back to our final episode in this Dig Down Deep series exploring the journey of Ruth. And what a journey it has been. Here we are in the final few verses of chapter 4. Read with me verses 18 to 22. This then is the family line of Perez. Perez was the father of Hezron. Hezron the father of Ram. Ram the father of Amminadab. Amminadab the father of Nahshon. Nahshon the father of Salmon. Salmon the father of Boaz. Boaz the father of Obed. Obed the father of Jesse. And Jesse the father of David. The book of Ruth finishes with this genealogy, or as Mike Beaumont says, a PS or postscript. The scholar Derek Kidner reminds us that God's hand is all over history. God works out his purpose generation after generation. Limited as we are to one lifetime, each of us sees so little of what happens. A genealogy is a striking way of bringing before us the continuity of God's purpose through the ages. The process of history, Kidner goes on to say, is not haphazard. There is a purpose in it all, and the purpose is the purpose of God. I would recommend you taking the time to read the backstories of those mentioned in this genealogy. They do make for interesting reading. Stories like those of Tamar, the mother of Perez, and Rahab of Jericho, who married Salmon. In these stories, we see the footsteps of God, who works in the ordinary, everyday lives of those who surrender their lives to him. They are a reminder that God's heart is for everyone to be part of his family, regardless of background or circumstances. So in conclusion to this Dig Down Deep series exploring the book of Ruth, I'd like to leave us with a few final thoughts to chew over. Firstly, Ruth is a story of redemption. Boaz served both Ruth and Naomi as a kinsman redeemer. He brought hope out of despair, a life out of death, and through his faith in action, he turned their fortunes around, from famine to feasting. In the same way, these closing verses of the genealogy point to Jesus, who himself becomes our Redeemer, who rescues us from slavery and death, and who gives us new life in him. Redemption is the promise of having our whole lives won back to him, and there is hope for even the most stubborn areas of our lives. Secondly, Ruth is an encouragement to live a daily life of active faith. Ruth found faith in the midst of famine, and Boaz lived faithfully when surrounded by wealth. We don't need circumstances to change before we can live for Jesus. Rather, we can find grace to live faithfully despite the circumstances that we do face. God in his grace might choose to change our famine to feasting, but equally, he might not. What is absolutely certain, though, is that whatever situation we might face, whatever situation we are going through, he will be with us and will provide for us with what we need. Thirdly, we might never know the full story or outcome of our decisions. Naomi made the decision to return to Bethlehem, and Ruth made the decision to stay with her. The result of these small decisions of faith, as we have seen, was huge for their personal lives, but also for generations to come. I love the story of Stephen Grellet, the 19th century preacher who felt God told him to go and preach to some local woodcutters in the forest. When he arrived at the cabin, there was no one there. But instead of giving up and going home, he carried on and he preached his heart out. Years later, a stranger approached him and confessed to have been listening out of sight. He had given his life to the Lord, got hold of a Bible, and led his fellow woodcutters to Jesus as well. They in turn went out to preach in the local area, and almost 1,000 others had decided to follow Jesus too. We might never know the outcome of our lives, but the book of Ruth is a comforting reminder that God is always at work from generation to generation. So that brings us to the end of this Dig Down Deep series exploring the book of Ruth. I trust that you have enjoyed your time and that you have grown deeper in your understanding of God and his ways and his word. God bless.